What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero. You're listening to the Republic Broadcasting Network, where you'll find out what the Fukushima is going on.
And aloha, America. Welcome to our show today. It is Friday, March 29th, 2019. Thank goodness it's Friday. Thank goodness it's Friday. Thank goodness it's Friday. It's been a crazy week. It really has, and I could use a weekend off. I don't know about you. Anyway, we have a lot to talk about today. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. Mike is in our control room, ready to answer the phone, put you on the air with your comments, questions, and observations. And, of course, this being Friday, in hour number 3, the lovely Lady Claire will be joining us. So let's get right on into it. Normally, I don't bother watching the political rallies, but I felt I had to tune into Trump's in Michigan last night because it was his first rally after the release of William Barr's basically announcement that Robert Mueller had not found any evidence of collusion. There were going to be no more indictments. And I kind of wanted to see how he was going to handle it. And there's no question, you know, his spirits were up. He's very buoyed about this. And there were a couple of moments where I think he crossed the line. I think the pencil neck comment was very unpresidential. But overall, I felt he did exercise restraint. He didn't gloat too much about it. But one thing that rally made very, very obvious, his base is fired up by this revelation that there was no collusion. And he, of course, packed that facility. And somebody walked down the outside with a camcorder just showing how long the line was of people that had tried to get on in. So Trump is still packing them in. And so Trump went out there and he made a very good speech, as he tends to do, and fired everybody up, got them all the momentum going, and then of course slipped in things about, yes, we're going to go into Venezuela, which at that point I turned it off here. But apparently it's been a good week for Donald Trump. The latest Rasmussen poll has him at a 50% approval rating, which is very good for midterm for a president. Normally they'll start out high, coming off the high of the election, and then as the disappointments pile up, the approval rating goes down and down and down. And usually, you know, before the re-election campaign starts, it's pretty low. Trump is at 50%. That's very good for Donald Trump here. All right, more about the domestic politics a little bit later. I want to turn to the international news, and things are heating up over Venezuela. Vladimir Putin is basically sending a clear warning, hands off Venezuela. There will not be a regime change allowed. Basically, they're throwing down the gauntlet. And Foreign Ministry spokesperson Maria Zakharova is trying to remind everybody that the Russian forces that are in Venezuela are there within the ambit of a 2001 military technical cooperation agreement with Caracas. So they've been doing this all along. This is nothing new. And of course, from Washington, D.C.'s point of view, oh, it's horrible. It's proof of Russian aggression. They're destabilizing the area, and they shouldn't do that because that's our job. So, obviously, the Elliot Abrams is out there saying the Russians will pay a price, and there will be a response to Moscow over Venezuela. We're going to boycott vodka or something like that here. Meanwhile, satellite photos are showing that Venezuela has deployed the S-300 missile defense system at the Captain Manuel Rios Air Base in the Guarico state. This is a key air base south of Caracas. So they're already up and running. Okay. Now, a lot of people, not just Russia, are pointing out this is hypocritical of the United States, you know, to be out there demanding that Russia respect Venezuelan sovereignty when it's the U.S. that's in there trying to topple an elected government. And the new spin coming out of Washington, D.C. is, well, we don't recognize the results of that last election, and nobody can make us do it. It's like the same thing they pulled with the Crimean referendum, where Crimea wanted to break off from Ukraine, and merge with the Russian republics, and they had a referendum, which is their right under international law. And the U.S. response is, we don't recognize the right of the Crimeans to have a referendum. Well, too bad. Just too bad. And meanwhile, there has been a fourth blackout in Venezuela, which makes it very obvious this is some kind of an attack here. Now, Guido has announced he's going to launch a Venezuela-wide tactical action to topple Maduro. He's not saying exactly what that's going to be or who's going to be doing it, because the military is not supporting him and the Venezuelan people are not supporting him. So is this going to be more hacking attacks on Venezuela's power structure, water systems, who knows what all else? But he's sounding the warning. Guido is coming. All right, we're going to do a shout out now to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining the network. The U.S. is now demanding foreign oil companies cut all ties with Venezuela. They've contacted trading houses and refineries and instructed them to curtail their dealings with Venezuela or face sanctions. Now, according to the sources, the demand is unjust since the U.S. is asking for the cessation of trade, which is not on paper prohibited by U.S. sanctions. It's just the U.S. government throwing its weight around. Meanwhile, Juan Guaido is facing more and more questions about corruption from the Venezuelan government. Apparently, he had taken a lot of foreign trips totaling about $100,000, and he is refusing to say where that money came from. And of course, Guaido is very upset over the fact that he has now been banned from holding public office in Venezuela for 15 years. Over in Syria, the Syrian army has warded off an offensive by Tahrir al-Sham coming from the supposedly demilitarized zone. So they fended off these attacks at military points in northern Hama and southern Idlib. Meantime, a military source reported the Syrian army forces destroyed the terrorist hideouts near the towns of El-Latamina and Kafr Zida with bomber drones. So it's still going on over there. Now, Syria, as they send in these sweep teams, to basically go through these terrorist bases that have been abandoned, they continue to find U.S.-supplied weapons and munitions, including TOW anti-tank missiles. So, once again, the U.S. was playing a double game. Over in Syria, there is this so-called refugee camp, Rukban. It's now being described as a U.S.-controlled concentration camp. Apparently, the Pentagon will not let the refugees who want to leave. And the U.S. is rejecting offers to resolve the humanitarian crisis in the Rukban refugee camp, which sits inside a 55-kilometer zone occupied by the U.S. along the Syria-Jordan border. And they're not letting anybody leave, even though apparently people are literally starving to death or dying from exposure. The U.S. has not provided humanitarian aid to the camp, even though there is a U.S. military base just 12 miles away. Now, most of the people in the refugee camp have expressed a desire to return to their homes now that the war is pretty much over. But it looks like the camp's presence is being used to help justify the U.S.'s continued illegal occupation of Syria. And that's exactly what it is. It's an illegal occupation. All right. Over in Yemen, there was an airstrike that destroyed a hospital earlier this week. 7 people, including children, were dead. 8 more people were injured. The U.S. is saying, oh, this was an awful thing. And then they say, well, we'll let the Saudis investigate what happened. We're sure that the Saudis will tell us the truth about just how it is a hospital became targeted. Now, the House Republican leadership is once more trying to bring about a bill to kill the Yemen War Powers Act. They basically want to reassert their constitutional role of deciding when and where this nation goes to war. Now, they tried it before. It got shot down. They're going to try it again. And I wish them luck. Because we can't have a country where presidents can just say, I'm going to go out and attack people. And we've been having that going back to George W. Bush now. Do you remember the Charlie Hebdo attack? And one of the attackers was Peter Sharif, also known as Abu Hamza. He's accused of terrorism. Apparently, the Saudi-backed government in Yemen has granted him citizenship. And that puts a rather interesting spin on just exactly what was behind that whole attack. We're still hearing repercussions from Donald Trump's recognition of Israel's sovereignty over the Golan Heights. And basically, the entire world has condemned it, except, of course, for Israel. And now they're moving on with their so-called deal of the century, which they've been talking about for 2 years now. The U.S. is promising to unveil the details after the Israeli elections. But you have Trump has recognized Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. It's recognized Israel's sovereignty over the Golan Heights. We know what is going to happen next. Israel's going to officially annex the West Bank. Trump will sign off on it, and Israel will say, it's all ours. Okay? There's no more occupied territories, therefore the boycott, divestment, sanctions movement can go pound sand. So, will this help Netanyahu win his election? Probably. But right now, all 28 nations of the European Union have rejected Israeli annexations of the Golan Heights. This is a hugely unpopular decision. The Golan Heights are legally part of Syria, occupied by Israel in 1967 following the Six-Day War, and annexed by them in 1981. Now, Israel continues to maintain that the Six-Day War was a defensive war. They were coming for us. We knew they were going to do a sneak attack. And we have an article on the front of whatreallyhappened.com, which lays out the actual history of what happened. And it actually goes back to where Egypt nationalized the Sinai Canal, the canal that goes through there, which angered Great Britain. And Britain and Israel basically wanted to take back control, and that was basically the foundation of the Six-Day War. So it was a war of aggression. Anyway, the recognition of the annexation has fueled concern Israel may try to annex more occupied territories in the future, figuring that Trump will sign off on them. And Netanyahu has suggested that is the case, saying that anything taken in war is ours now, which I guess includes Washington, D.C. The United States government has already issued the order that all maps of that part of the world produced by the U.S. government will be redrawn to show that the Golan Heights are now part of Israel. So, just crazy here. All right. This is the 1-year anniversary of Gaza's Great March of Return. Actually, tomorrow is it exactly, but they do these marches on Friday. And there's actually been a complete lack of information coming out from either Gaza or Israel as to how big today's march was and if, in fact, there was violence involved. And I was trying to actually search some stuff out, and I couldn't. So there's a blackout on communications coming out from there, and I find that very, very troubling. All right. Anyway, Netanyahu is still out there saying that Israel to wage a broad military campaign in Gaza if needed. He's talking tough because he knows that's good politics. This is all part of his campaign to win re-election. And his comments came after 2 consecutive nights of heavy Israeli bombardments. Now, over in Ukraine, they have their elections on Sunday, the first round of its presidential election, their equivalent of our primaries. And it's interesting that for the first time, there are no pro-Russian candidates running. And it seems that any candidates who were pro-Russian were somehow encouraged to step down or step out here. Okay, over in Libya, Gaddafi's spy master Abdullah al-Sunusi is facing a death sentence, but he's already come on out with some rather interesting information, basically saying that Libya gave former French President Sarkozy an $8 million bribe. So he's going to go before the firing squad before he has a chance to tell us about the cozy relationship he had with our Western security services when he liaised between Gaddafi, the CIA, and MI6. Yep, got to get rid of those who know too much. Over in India and Pakistan, a little bit of a whoopsie. About a month ago, Indian authorities claimed that 25 Pakistani fighter jets were detected attempting to breach Indian airspace. During the course of that skirmish, an Indian helicopter got shot out of the sky. And everyone is saying, oh, it's time to retaliate. India has now said that their best analysis is they shot it down themselves. A defensive missile fired during the incident missed its mark, locked onto the helicopter, and blew it up, killing 7 people. Over the East China Sea, 2 U.S. B-52 bombers are training with the Japanese Air Force and with the U.S. Navy in what's called an integration training mission. In other words, getting them used to working with each other, getting over the language barriers. And apparently they departed from Andersen Air Force Base in Guam, and they trained with F-15 Eagles, which are currently assigned to the Kadena Air Base in Japan. The exercise actually took place on March 20th. It's just now coming on out. And the usual propaganda. The U.S. use of bombers in the region has been going on as part of its continuous bomber presence, a mission Washington says is in support of a free and open Indo-Pacific, as long as they do what we want them to do. We talked a little while ago about how these U.S. Marine units were practicing landings on this Japanese island of Lajima, establishing a beachhead, seizing the island's airfield, bringing in heavier assets to strike more enemy positions. And the read from this is that these Marine units may be getting ready for an island hopping campaign against those islands in the South China Sea. And that would bring us into basically direct war with China. And I'm not sure we want to do that. China just pulled a really interesting move. One of their newest weapons that came on out is a long-range cruise missile that is housed inside a standard shipping container, 20-foot-long shipping container. And from the outside, until they're going to fire the missile, you don't know it's a weapon. And so this changes the game amazingly, because it can turn cargo ships into warships. It can turn cargo harbors into military bases, commercial ports into military bases. And that was very, very clever of the Chinese to do here. A lot of people are still wondering about why the United States continues to talk about selling Taiwan F-16s while they're still not able to resolve the trade talks with China. It's kind of a dumb-headed policy. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. And once again, our heartfelt thanks to everybody who has been donating. But again, we are just getting by at Republic Broadcasting, and we need your continued support if we're going to keep on doing what we're doing. And of course, the thing to keep uppermost in your mind is that for the last 2 years, The entire corporate media was lying to all of America and being very well paid to do it. And over here at the independent media, Republic Broadcasting, we were telling you the truth. And we don't get a lot of money for doing that. We get what you, in your generosity, are willing to send us. So the postal address where you can send a check, or a money order, or if you prefer anonymity cash, is Republic Broadcasting Network, 2251 Double Creek Drive, number 302, Round Rock, Texas, 78664. And the phone number where you can make a credit or debit. And by way of explanation, the reason I'm talking kind of funny today is I bit my tongue in my sleep last night. It's just making everything so difficult here. Oh, the joys of live radio. What can I tell you? Okay, the United States has been talking about developing a new class of nuclear warhead, a low-yield, so-called tactical nuclear warhead that will fit on existing missiles, which currently carry the big city buster bombs. And if the U.S. goes ahead with that, the Navy is probably going to be deploying those low-yield nuclear missiles on U.S. missile submarines. Apparently with the idea that there'll be less resistance to using a small nuclear warhead as opposed to uncorking one of the multi-megaton city destroyers. I'm a little uncomfortable over all this talk about making it easier to use a nuclear weapon. But that's apparently what they're thinking. This is a little more troubling. This is coming out of Russia today. A Pentagon official has said the U.S. will retain the right to carry out a nuclear strike in response to a conventional attack. And went on to say that a no first use policy would erode U.S. allies' belief that they're protected. In other words, the willingness of the U.S. government to respond with nukes to a conventional attack is supposed to reassure our allies that they are in turn protected, so that they won't start building their own nuclear arsenals, is apparently thinking there. The United States has been forced to ground the B-1B bombers for a second time. Apparently they found dangerous flaws in its ejection system. And apparently the bombers suspended from flight as a precautionary measure after a routine inspection discovered potentially fleet-wide issues with the system. Problem was found in the rigging of the drogue chute. This is a small parachute connected with the pilot's ejection seat, which helps pull the pilot out and away, and then pulls out the larger main chute. So we're going to have to check out each of the active B-1B bombers. As you know, the United Nations came out recently with a rights report, and everybody's out there screaming about the comments about Israel and Palestine. Oh, you anti-Semites, you Jew haters. You want Hitler to come back and gas Jewish babies in the ovens. You really ought to read the section on the United States, because while the United States government is always ready to point fingers at other countries over their human rights records, the human rights records of the U.S. government is not very good. The UN report puts the U.S. in a negative light for infringement on citizens' civil rights, prevalence of money politics, rising income inequality, worsening racial discrimination, growing threats against children, women, and immigrants, as well as human rights violations caused by unilateral America First policies. Well, that's obviously a dig at Donald Trump here. Okay, so they went on this thing. Of course, last year, the United States withdrew from the United Nations Human Rights Council. And they still continue to grab top awards in the abuse of power by public officials. Boy, did we not get a lesson in that on Monday. All righty. Okay. Now, there is a lawsuit that is being launched by the Lawyers Committee for 9/11 Inquiry, Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth, and 9/11 victim family members Robert McIlvaine and Barbara Krukowski-Rastelli. And it's filed to basically go after the FBI. And I'll tell you more about it after these next commercials. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. And it looks like, you know, YouTube is like jamming my video feed here because it keeps just dropping down. Yeah, it's disconnecting, reconnecting. And I'm getting emails from people saying that they're not able to see it anymore. So YouTube is still up to their old tricks here, and I got to find another way of live streaming the video. Or maybe I'll just drop the video. It's you all know what I look like anyway. It's not like you need to see more of me. Claire, yes, she's pretty. You want to look at her. Me, not so much here. All right, so we're talking about this lawsuit that came from the Lawyers Committee for 9/11 Inquiry, Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth, and victim family members. And basically the lawsuit is claiming that the FBI knowingly hid evidence of the use of explosives in the World Trade Towers from Congress. And they're basically going and try and compel the release of some files. I wish them a lot of luck. The FBI tends not to go along with things like that. Okay, interesting little article here. Ever hear the phrase, treason doth never prosper? Why? If it prosper, none dare call it treason. Well, it did prosper. It all fell apart Monday. And I'm looking at this article in allnewspipeline.com, which is saying the same thing I am. Now is the time for Trump to basically fight back, fire with fire, and hold the leaders of this attempted coup responsible for their crimes against the American people. And the article goes on to basically say the Mueller investigation itself was never legitimate, and it wasn't. The special counsel statute says there has to be a regular Department of Justice investigation, and only when an indication is found that the crime has really occurred is a special counsel appointed to look at that one crime only. And Rod Rosenstein simply got Robert Mueller and said, you're now special counsel, mahi dictum est, and just go find something on Trump. Start with the Russian collusion. And he ran wild. And it was part of this conspiracy by the Obama administration, Democratic Party, their minions at the FBI and the Department of Justice against President Donald Trump, his allies, the American people, the Constitution. And we're not going to let this go. I mean, we had 2 years of Russia collusion. I'm sure that between all of us, we can whip up 2 years of don't forget how you got lied to. This panic, the Trump-Russia panic, all the fear-mongering. It was a huge disservice to the American people. And unfortunately, a lot of people on the Democratic side, the liberal side, they got caught up in it. They actually believed it. They actually believed it. And when the Mueller report came out, they were just devastated. Rachel Maddow was crying on the air. And they're very angry. Out in Hollywood, Rob Reiner's still out there tweeting saying, no, the collusion is real. You know, Mueller's the fake. Or William Barr is the fake. That's the latest spin, that William Barr is part of a cover-up. Well, if William Barr had misrepresented the Mueller report, would Mueller have said something by now? So you look at all those people who got very, very wealthy, feeding you this lie. Okay. I just got a message here from my control room. Apparently, Spectrum, again, is having bandwidth issues, and that's why my YouTube channel is acting up. So thanks, Mike, for looking into that. Yeah, Spectrum is just terrible. Even on their best days, we get 60 megabits per second download with paying for 300. Just horrible, horrible service out here. Oh, apparently this is David in our control room. My mistake. Anyway, getting on back to the domestic politics here. This whole Trump-Russia collusion started with Hillary Clinton. And authors Jonathan Allen and Amy Parnes wrote a book, Shattered Inside Hillary Clinton's Doomed Campaign, that Hillary Clinton's campaign staff decided to blame the loss on Russian interference less than 24 hours after she lost the election. So she couldn't accept the loss. They actually thought that they could fan this up and support the American people to kick Trump out and put Hillary into the White House. And of course, just keep on saying, I was cheated to keep the campaign donations coming on in. It was desperate. It was pathetic. And Clinton's true believers, they just grasped to their chest, we know that Hillary should have won. Article out of uns.com. The Democrats are self-destructing. And yeah, they continue to make fools of themselves. Tom Hartman writes for Common Dreams and apparently was always okay to tell the truth about the Bush regime's deceits and illegal wars. But if you talked about Obama, nope, you were there. So Hartman is now out there saying that Attorney General William Barr is a cover-up general. So he's on board with this spin about how William Barr is covering up what happened. He's accusing Barr of burying Mueller's report, cherry-picking fragments of sentences from it to justify Trump's behavior. And went on to say Barr's history of doing just this sort of thing to help Republican presidents in legal crisis explains why Trump brought him back in to head the Justice Department. But again, as I said, if Barr misrepresented what Mueller reported, wouldn't Mueller have said something by now? Rush Limbaugh had a really great comment on his show. It's fun watching the Democrats try to out-left each other. So Trey Gowdy came on out and basically said, look, the only campaign that actually did take money and support from Russia was the Hillary campaign. And he's absolutely true about that. Representative Nunes agrees, saying Trump was investigated for what the Clinton campaign did. Anyway, Mueller is now closing up shop and just basically, it's the post-Mueller world. Any remaining cases they had open are being reassigned to career prosecutors in permanent offices. So with Mueller done, now is the time to repair our relations with Russia, one would think. And obviously Trump is relieved. I think probably to an extent Putin is relieved. It's good news for Republicans on Capitol Hill who stood by Trump. And the report is also a plus for the country in that the country is now recognizing the degree to which they were lied to by the Democrats, by the corporate media. So will this be a window of opportunity to repair relations with Russia, which have gotten really bad? By the way, James Corbett is out with another one of his wonderful videos. This one is Russiagate in 3 minutes, and it's also on the main page at whatreallyhappened.com. I love his videos. I love the one he did about 9/11 And this is another one that's just as good, and you need to look at it here. All right, we're going to take a phone call now from James in Sacramento. Aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, I was listening to your show. I'm always a day behind listening to your shows. But the guy the other day that was talking about the rabbits and using that metaphor and trying to do that, I understand
cats.
biology. Oh, yeah, cat. That was a cat. Yeah. You know, there's an old saying about how do you get rid of a feral cat? You don't feed it.
Yeah.
But did you get the joke?
Yeah, I did get the joke here. You know, actually, out here in Hawaii, it's illegal to feed the feral cats.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Wow. All right. So anyway, what I was going to put out for that part was rats, because this is a absolute biologically recorded fact. You can't deny the facts, and it has to do with whenever the food supply gets higher and higher, the rat population, especially back in the old days when rats were just rampant, but the more the food supply was there, the greater the rat population would grow. And then the rat population would grow until it exceeded its food supply, and then you would have a bunch of rats dying off.
Yes.
I mean, is that cruel to say that? But it's just a fact. It's a fact.
No, that's the way nature works here. And you know, we're about to have major food shortages in this country.
Yeah, well, that was the other thing I wanted to talk about, was about, the population thing, where, you know, when you and I were young, I'm only 6 years younger than you, but it was like 3.5 billion on the planet. And there was all these people in the 60s and the early 70s that were calling for, population control. We've got too many people on the planet, and it was only 3.5 billion. I mean, seriously, Michael. And nowadays, what is it? It's almost 7 billion, but it's 6.5 or 6.7, something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
and
the planet's getting crowded. Well, you know, look at it. Sex is a lot more fun than dying.
Yeah. You know what? I'm going to have to agree with you on that one. Although I haven't died yet. But the other part I do understand. But the thing is it's the food supply. We got because of the petrochemicals and all the fertilizers and all this stuff, we made more and more food. And if human beings don't think they're going to just do just exactly what rats do, they're deluding themselves, because it's going to be just like what the rats do. When there's a ton of food, there will be more and more people populating. And as soon as the food runs out, when we reach that little critical crosshair on that, what is it, the red line? Yeah. And then it's like, and now it's like, well, that's, you see it in Africa and stuff, because they don't know how to make their own, they don't know how to farm and stuff, so they blow it.
Well, wait a minute. That's a drastic oversimplification. I mean, what happens in Africa, of course, is they'll get, natural disasters like floods, like we're getting. They'll get locusts. They'll get droughts. And it's not that they don't know how to farm. It's that it's a very tough place to farm for the vast majority of that continent here. But yeah, population is always dependent upon the available food supply. The reason the human population is expanding so much is because we have no natural predators. I mean, yes, if you walk out in the middle of Africa, you might be eaten by a lion. But on a general overall level, we don't have any predators who are limiting our population growth. And we do have, at least for the moment, abundant food. And it is an issue. And I am in agreement with those who say there are too many human beings on this planet. It's just that everybody who's out there pushing that, they want somebody else to die or somebody else to go without children. I'm not the sort of person who can play God like that.
Yeah. Me either. Yeah, but it is. It's one of those things that takes care of itself. I mean, it'll just balance itself out. You know, it might not be a pleasant scene to watch, but it will
look at what
balance
happened at
itself out.
Rapa Nui when their population ate the island down basically to the ground. And they ran out of food. They started eating each other.
Yeah. Yeah, and
Okay.
that's happened in a few other. That's happened in a few other countries too, where they've started
It's
eating
happened
each
everywhere.
other.
if you go back far enough in history, virtually every major branch of the human race
Oh my God,
has gone through a period of cannibalism.
The Soviet Union, when Stalin was starving, what was it, like 40 million people out there? There were stories about people eating each other.
Well, you know, it wasn't that Stalin deliberately starved the people. That was the aftermath of that Lysenkoism disaster, which is should be a lesson for those who are just slavishly following along with human-caused global warming.
But you know what? Michael? I'm going to let you go here. Americans, a whole lot of people in the world, have what my buddies and I call the goldfish mentality. You know, you see the goldfish swims around the bowl, and he goes, "Hey, look at this diver and the box of gold." And then he swims around the bowl. "Hey, look at the castle." And then he swims around the bowl again and goes, "Hey, look, there's another diver with a box of gold." You know, and then he swims around the bowl and says, "Hey, there's another castle." The goldfish mentality, it's like they can't keep anything in their brains for a year.
Well,
you know,
here's an interesting experiment that you can do, and I've seen it done. You take a goldfish that's been in a bowl for a while, that's his home, and you put it into a larger bowl, goldfish bowl, and you slowly fill that up so that the water comes up over the top and goes all the way up. Now that goldfish, if it wanted, could leave the small bowl and explore the outside one, but they won't. They still stay circling inside that small bowl in their home. Anyway, I got to let you go. We got to take a break.
All right, brother.
Yeah.
I love the psychology on that one. All right. Hey, have a good day.
All right, we'll be right back after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. And apparently Spectrum is having some serious bandwidth issues between here in Hawaii and the mainland. It comes and it goes. Right now, the YouTube stream is running at full speed, but every 2 minutes or so it goes down to zero and has to reconnect. So I don't know what's going on with Spectrum, but they're not a very good company, but they're a monopoly. And that's the reason we used to have laws against monopolies in this country, so there would be competition to keep prices down and keep quality up to the consumer. But that's not how we do things in America today. Okay, getting on back to our domestic politics. You're going to love this one. There's been a lot of attention about Hillary Clinton's private email server and the fact that there were classified documents on it, which is a Title 18 violation. But apparently there's been a new embarrassment because when Hillary's team were subpoenaed by the FBI for their emails, they sent the emails to the FBI over a Gmail account. And some of those emails were classified. I mean, that is just really out there. Okay, let's take another phone call. Thomas in Florida, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hello. I heard you talking earlier about the Chinese being able to put a missile in a container.
Yes.
And it brought back very old information that we've had here for a long time. And there's a guy called Li Ka-sheng. He's a Chinese tycoon. And he was worth about $13 billion, they calculated, 19 years ago, in the year 2000. He's connected with this company called Hutchinson Whampoa. And they won a bid. They won a bid in 1996 and effectively controlled both ends of the Panama Canal.
Yes.
But it gets worse. 50 miles off the Florida coast, directly east of Palm Beach, is Grand Bahama Island, and they have a huge terminal there for containers. They've got a port there that can accept more than 48 feet of draft for a boat. They have an 11,000-foot airstrip which will land the biggest planes in the world. They have a huge container port there with, what's it got? It's 780-acre tract of land, which is between the container port and the airport. And they're able to put up 57 hectares of land, which interprets into 1.5 million 40-foot containers.
Yes.
And that's exactly due east of Palm Beach. So if anyone's worried about whether they might be able to do a surprise attack on us with men, equipment, or 50 miles from Palm Beach to the east, I mean, that's amazing. And no one seems to think anything of it.
I think this is more economic than anything else. For one thing, Hutchinson Whampoa has already started building new locks at Panama that are going to be larger, because the next generation of cargo ships and tankers are going to be larger. In fact, just by coincidence, I happened to catch a TV show last night talking about how the city of Charleston is desperately trying to upgrade their commercial shipping port so that they're not left behind in this new world of super container ships and super tankers. So I think the Grand Bahamas just represents a shipping hub for the Atlantic for the Chinese. And I don't think it's a bad thing that they're enlarging the Panama Canal. Anyway, listen, Thomas, thanks an awful lot. We got to take a station identification. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here, hour number 2. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. And I suppose I should be speaking a little bit more slowly. Again, Spectrum is having bandwidth issues. It's playing havoc with the YouTube stream, and it's interfering with our audio going back and forth to Round Rock, Texas. So, again, this is Spectrum. And I wish we had an alternative out here, but we do not. We're stuck with them. Alrighty, getting on back to domestic politics. One thing the Mueller investigation has come up with that Democrats are not going to be happy about. Apparently, the Obama White House counsel, Greg, will be indicted for Ukraine corruption. Apparently, he was tangled up with all of that work for Ukraine's Ministry of Justice, and that was part of that whole Paul Manafort thing. So he's now in trouble. Now, Barr says that there will be a redacted copy of the Mueller report made available mid-April, and I can already hear the Democrats screaming, make the whole report available, unredacted. We demand it now. That could backfire on them. Hang on a second. There are sirens sounding outside there. And I don't know why. Okay. Just going to raise the stress level for the rest of the program here. All right. Yesterday, a federal judge ordered the FBI to turn over former Director James Comey's memos, including the notes that he took during his infamous one-on-one meetings with President Trump. And they have to be turned over to CNN, USA Today, Judicial Watch, and other outlets. And yeah, there are sirens going on outside my window. I'm not seeing any emergency alerts on the TV. I wonder if it's another false alarm. Okay. Judicial Watch is also suing for the records of communication between James Clapper, John Brennan, and CNN. And it's a Freedom of Information Act lawsuit. And you know what's really interesting? You're not supposed to have to go to a lawsuit. The Freedom of Information Act says you go to the government, you request a record, they give it to you. That's what the law actually does say. The lawsuits get filed when the government says, no, we don't want you to see this. But apparently, this is focusing on the fact that Clapper may have leaked information regarding the now discredited Steele dossier to CNN in January of 2017. And hang on a second here. I have to respond to my wife. She's concerned about the sirens. Okay. There we are. Yeah, that's a little disconcerting. And it seems to be down there. Yeah, the sirens are going outside, and I don't know why. Over in Brooklyn, Councilman Kalman Yeager, who represents Midwood, is out there tweeting off attacks on Representative Omar, saying she's an anti-Semite, and repeating this claim that Palestine does not exist. He's actually saying that. Okay. There's a new poll out now that reveals Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's rather over-the-top style of politics is not resonating with the voters. Less than 25% are giving her a favorable rating. So she may want to tone it down a little bit. All right, so let's talk about the latest on the Jussie Smollett hate hoax. And I think probably a lot of people would have preferred for it to have faded away by now. But there are going to be repercussions. And Charles Barkley was out there on CBS Stephen Colbert show saying that Smollett may think he's gotten off scot-free, but the whole incident will still have costs. And he says, we all lose on this one. So we have the prosecutor, Kim Foxx, who recused herself, but not really. I guess she had her fingers crossed behind her back, has admitted that the evidence that they would have presented at his trials would have convicted him, but they still let him go. Now, the Illinois Prosecutors Bar Association has written a letter declaring that Kim Foxx failed in her most fundamental ethical obligations to the public in dismissing the Smollett case. And as you know, Trump is insisting the FBI and Department of Justice look in and see just how this came about. You know, another celebrity gets off scot-free. Ooh, imagine my shock. We're going to do a shout out now to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network. And can you believe this? Jussie Smollett has been nominated for an NAACP award for one of the Image Awards, which is actually coming up tomorrow. They're going to hand them on out. And host Anthony Anderson is saying he hopes Smollett will win. Now, NAACP stands for the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. So how does handing out an award for faking an anti-white hate crime advance colored people? Now, you watch. Smollett is going to be on the platform at the Democratic Convention in 2020. Let's take a phone call. Steve in Florida. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hello, Mike. How are you been?
Well, concerned about all these sirens out the window.
Oh. Well, you smell smoke?
No, the sirens appear to have been down around the Pearl Harbor area. And I think they've stopped now.
Okay.
Man, that was nerve-wracking.
Yeah, hopefully they have it under control. Yeah, this Smollett stuff, I mean, you know, I don't know what to say about it. I mean, because it's not just the so-called right or the so-called left. I think everybody's just sick of him. And anybody with any brains, you know, sees what he did. But anyway, I just had a minor correction of what you'd been saying.
Yep.
I listened to you like always a day later. But anyway, you were saying that, like, the day that Hillary lost, she announced this Russian collusion thing.
Well, she didn't announce it then.
Right,
She didn't announce it then. That's when they came up with it.
Oh, no, but wait a minute. The very last debate that she had with Trump,
yes,
she threw in, you have been colluding with Putin, with Russia. Yeah. And he said, what? This is during a debate. And it really stuck out. But the thing that made me remember it, she says, yes, 17 governmental intelligence agencies have told me that. Because I thought, 17 intelligence agencies, how many are there?
There are 17.
She said that during the debate. Huh?
Yeah, there are 17 of them. And so obviously the idea was in her mind from the beginning. But apparently after she lost the election, they sat down and said, seriously, let's push this. Let's say that Russia helped Trump steal the election. We'll get Trump thrown out of the White House, and I get to go on in.
So I guess that was like supposed to be she's something else. But anyway, can I ask you just like a quick question? Did you really meet Ryan Dawson? Because he's out there saying he met you finally.
Yes, he came out here to Hawaii.
I'll be darned, that's great.
Yes.
Oh, that is wonderful. Because I know that you've been in contact. I've been listening to you guys for 6-8 years. And, I know that you knew each other but never met. But that's good. You met him. That's
we
good.
Finally got to meet here. I don't even remember.
A live stream and so forth.
We first got together when he was still, working on the Lost Colony of Roanoke. And I mean, we're talking years and years ago, maybe more than 10.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. He was having trouble with something. I said, you ought to ask Mike Rivero about that. It was something about his computer or something like that. I said, ask Mike. He'll fix it. He'll know what to do with it. So, yeah, I'm glad that y'all met. But can I mention somebody else that I like, this sort of new?
Real quick, because we got to get back to news.
Yeah. Gotcha. Sorry, Mike. But it's this J.F. Garipi, and he's French-Canadian, so it's, Jean-Francois Garipi. And he does this thing called public space. And, like, nothing's off the table, but he's real careful, no hate speech whatsoever. But, yeah, he tells the whole story. Did you never saw him, huh?
No, the name does not ring a bell.
It's called Public Space, and he streams every night at 7, Eastern Standard Time. So, but anyway, love your show, Mike. Love you, and I'm glad to hear that you met up with Rye finally.
All right. Well, listen. Thank you very much.
You and Claire were so nice.
Okay, thank you very much, and let me just get something done here. Oh, okay. Thank you for the phone call. We're going to let you go. Somebody just sent me this notice from the Hawaii Emergency Management Agency where apparently there was a new siren test scheduled for today near here, and it's saying residents will hear the siren sound during the time frame, and testing will include short blasts known as burps, and they're just checking the functionality of the sirens. The sirens were installed as part of HIEMA's ongoing outdoor warning siren program. Now, the reason Claire and I freaked out is normally the siren system gets tested on the 1st of every month. So why they're running one now when the 1st of the month is just a few days away, it was a little unsettling. And mostly because of what we went through last year with that bogus ballistic missile alert. So that's all it was, and no big deal. So I can calm down and lower my blood pressure here. All right, let's take another phone call. Art off the grid, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. This whole Justice Smollett thing is just getting absolutely out of control. I don't do Twitter, but I've got people, who actually do Twitter, and they told me that, the whole Twitter sphere just erupted over this, with people talking about we should boycott the show, and nobody should ever watch the show, and how dare they bring him back after this, after he lied to the people like this, even to the point to where there was one post that said that maybe they ought to have his character actually do the same thing, only this time in the show, have the character actually get convicted.
Yes.
This is just insane. And I was talking to the board op before coming on, and it was kind of funny because we were talking about, this guy's going to end up having a school named after him. He'll get his own Jesse Smollett Boulevard or some kind of crazy crap like that.
Yep.
But it wouldn't surprise me if they did something like this.
Oh, yeah. They're trying to make this guy a hero for staging a hate crime hoax that made white people look bad, even though he used black people to do it.
Yeah. It's crazy. It's like, how does anybody believe this crap anymore? And here's the crazy thing. Anybody with any common sense who's been paying attention to this, the next time we have, say, something like this really happens to somebody, how many people out there are going to go, yep, here we go again, another Jesse Smollett, and they're not going to believe it?
Yeah.
This is the kind of stuff that we're looking at possibly happening.
Well, it's already been happening. I mean, if you look at how many of these so-called hate crimes have been revealed as hoaxes, and normally they don't get this kind of press, the only reason this one did is because Jussie Smollett is a celebrity. He's this, actor on this very popular TV show, and that's what made it a major story. And in a lot of ways, I think it's a good thing that people come to understand that hate crimes can be faked and are faked, that it's a reality of life that we need to be looking at.
Yeah, and here's another thing. I've actually, like I said, it's very limited what we've got around here for talk radio. So during the day, I listen to Glenn Beck and Rush Limbaugh, and they've actually made comparisons between this Jussie Smollett thing and the whole Mike Brown hands up, don't shoot, and all these others. And they're like, this is what we've come to. And they're all saying the same thing, that, it's coming to the point that people are just not going to believe it when it really happens. You can only remember the story. I don't know about you, but I remember when I was little, my mama told me the story about the little boy who cried wolf.
Yes.
And that's where we're headed with this. It's going to get to the point to where something's really going to happen, and nobody's going to believe it, and then everybody's going to be in an uproar. How dare you? Just like with the whole fake Kavanaugh molested this girl in school or whatever it was, you automatically got to believe the victim, but you don't really have a victim. So now, when a woman is accosted, people aren't going to believe it because of the whole Kavanaugh scandal and the whole Trump scandal and all this other kind of garbage. This is where we're headed, where we're going to have something really going to happen, and people are going to go, yeah, right.
Well, we've already been there. Back in the 1990s, remember the militant feminist movement, all men are rapists and that kind of stuff? And rape became the second most falsely reported crime in the United States. Innocent men got thrown in jail, and women were claiming that they were raped just to get some media attention. And there was a backlash of lawsuits by the accused. And the end result was that police departments were less willing to accept a rape complaint at face value. And in the long run, it harmed real rape victims. But for the opportunists who, rode this to book deals and TV shows, they didn't really care.
Yeah. Well, it's pretty messed up. It has to come to this, but I don't know. At some point, it's got to turn around and change, and I don't know what it's going to take to get that. Anyway, thanks, Mike. Have a great one. We'll talk to you another time.
All right. Thanks an awful lot here. And in one way, it's good that this came out right now because what we have is kind of a 1-2 punch where, first of all, you had the implosion of the Russia collusion story and the humiliation of America's corporate media. And now you have the Jussie Smollett affair, which is revealing to America that many hate crimes are, in fact, hoaxes. So that's a good thing, I think. Okay, another article here from uns.com. No punishment for anti-white hoaxes. Smollett created the hate hoax of the year and supposedly will suffer no consequences for it. Well, maybe not, because he's still under federal investigation, and Chicago is now demanding that he reimburse them the $130,000 that they spent investigating his allegations. And if he doesn't pay up in a timely manner, they're going to hit him with a new charge. And by the way, Kim Fox, the prosecutor who recused herself but not really, apparently spoke at a fundraiser hosted by George Soros' son earlier this month. All right, we got to take a break for commercials. We got another caller waiting on the line. We will be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. And I don't mind admitting that siren test did rattle me after what we went through with the ballistic missile thing last year. And with, all morning long, there'd been all this heavy military air traffic over our heads as well. So didn't know what to think there. So calm. Okay, back to the phones. Dustin in New Jersey. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
You'd have to have another shirt made saying I survived 2 missile siren attacks.
Well, they didn't actually come out and say that there was a missile inbound. I mean, it was over at the Hawaii Emergency Management. They were going to conduct the test, but I didn't see it on any of the local news, and it probably would have been a little bit nicer if they'd made a larger effort to say, folks, relax, this is just a test. Yeah.
Hey, Mike, I want to talk about Smollett real quick because I don't really give a crap about the guy, but what show was he on TV?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that? I was distracted for a second.
Yeah, what show was he on TV?
Who?
Smollett.
Oh, it's called Empire.
That's where you're living. This is what goes on in empires. It's an oligarchy, people. The rules and laws are for thee, not for me. This guy is got connections to Michelle Obama, Kim Fox, and also Kamala Harris, I'm hearing, and that woman Chen, which was Michelle Obama's aide. And, Rahm Emanuel says he didn't know about it, but he damn well knew about it. Because if you looked at the chief of police next to him, the chief of police knew Rahm Emanuel knew about it, but he had to play the role of being I didn't know about it. I'm outraged,
Yeah.
I mean, this sets black people back so far because Michelle Obama is not going to fall for you if you're black or Asian or white or green and yellow polka dot. This is, the guy's got Don Lemon's phone number, or Don Lemon's got his phone number. So it's a small group,
Yeah.
It's a joke. But Mike, I wanted to move on real quick, unless you want to comment on that.
No, go ahead. I've got comments, but they're going to be later in the show.
On this Chinese container thing, I read about this a while ago, and then you talked about it. Russia was working on something called the Club K container, and it had like a missile of some variety inside of it. But we can't get ahead of ourselves saying, China's going to put them in, in Florida to it. These would be like at their ports per se as defense measures. I can see them doing that, but China's not going to attack us. They're trading partners with them unless you attack them. But we get ahead of ourselves saying, well, China's got them here and they got 5,000 men in each container ready to attack it. Come on, people. We need to relax a little.
Well, let's hang on and be fair. And by the way, I'm going to take you through the next commercial break. I thought it was a little gratuitous China bashing, but have you ever read the Tom Clancy book Red Storm Rising? And
No, but I heard about it. Yeah.
It's a very good book, very well researched. It's before he started using ghostwriters, and it went downhill after that. It was definitely one of his best books. It's kind of hard to find right now. And it talks about how Russia is desperate for oil, and they launched the Third World War. Bad Russians, bad Russians. And the way they capture Iceland is by using a cargo ship. So on that basis, there is merit to the idea that if China did want to do a sneak attack against somebody, that this missile system on a cargo ship would be an ideal platform. And so we have to be honest, we cannot rule that out. And right now, the United States is pushing on China between Taiwan, the South China Sea, the trade deal, and I know that Russia's got a containerized weapon system, and I seem to recall so does the United States of America, that they've got some kind of a missile system that is inside a standard shipping container, which is supposed to be deployable against pirates. So everybody's been thinking along this way.
I just get mad at a lot of bashing, like Venezuela bad, Russia bad. We attacked Iraq and Libya and Syria and Ukraine and Yemen with our Saudi friends and Israeli friends and this or that. And it's always everybody else is the bad guy, and I'm tired of it. Like, I see us being we're the aggressor people. I mean, it's just,
we are, but what do you expect the government to do? Come on out and say, yes, we're going to be evil and bad and mean, and we want you to pay for it and give us your children for it? It's not a good way to go. The propaganda is always going to be, we're the greatest nation on earth. I even heard somebody repeat that on Fox last night while we were waiting for Trump to come on out in Michigan. We're the greatest nation on earth. No, we're not. And but everybody else has to be bad. They're evil dictators. They're tyrants. Anyway, we got to take another break for commercials. Stay on the line, Dustin. I'm going to bring you back here. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. And before we go back to Dustin in New Jersey, apparently the ratings for Empire have just crashed since the charges were dropped. Apparently they were still up there all during this whole thing, but with the charges dropped, just turned off the audience. And as if that wasn't bad enough, Illinois State Representative Michael McAuliffe is planning to introduce legislation that would end tax credits to any business that employ Empire actor Jussie Smollett. Well, this is clearly aimed at Empire because Empire was lured to Illinois to film there by their generous film tax credits. So it looks like Empire is on its way out.
That's like the Roman Empire. All empires fall.
Yes, all empires eventually fall, including the American Empire.
And Mike, getting back to, like you said, exceptionalism, that's the thing. If Hillary Clinton and them, this oligarchy, certain Jewish people that believe in that, if they're like God's chosen or better, if they think they're better than you, if they're exceptional, then you're expendable and disposable. You're less than them.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like you're not on equal footing. But that's what these people show every day when they talk down to us and they lie to us. They're above us.
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, you see it in this Jussie Smollett case. He's a celebrity. He gets off. You have all these corporate media talking heads that lied to us for 2 years about Trump-Russia collusion. I haven't seen any of them fired yet, or even forced to take a pay raise. They're still on top there, and you've got these rich people who are literally bribing the premier colleges to take their loser kids in. Now something's going to happen to them. Fortunately, they're going to court here. And then you've got, of course, Hillary Clinton, who handled classified information, mishandled it, got off scot-free. The system definitely is rigged for what they like to call themselves the elites. We're elite. The laws are for you serfs, to keep you in your place, so you don't you don't threaten our power. Anyway, Dustin, we're going to let you go here, and thank you for the phone call. Okay, earlier in the show we were talking about how Juan Guaido had promised some kind of a Venezuela-wide tactical response. It may already be starting because the intelligence service headquarters in Caracas is on fire, and it's a bad one. And I'm going to take a shot here and say that, yes, this is an act of sabotage. So we'll see what happens there. What an ugly, ugly world this has become. All right, let's talk about the economic news here just a little bit. The fourth quarter gross domestic product sinks to 2.2, which is a little less glowing than Trump tried to make it sound like during his little visit in Michigan. Over in Europe, Mario Draghi is now demanding that Ireland and all EU countries have to get permission from the European Central Bank. They have to get permission to manage their gold reserves. Draghi wants to be in control of all of Europe's gold. I think that's probably going to alienate a lot of other people here. Right now in this country, we have an accelerating eviction crisis, and a lot of people are drawing parallels between that and the subprime mortgage crisis of the Great Recession. And we see it here all the time. We drive down the street, and on the sidewalk there are all these piles of things, and after a while you learn to recognize what they are. Oh, that's, somebody's doing a remodel, a refurbishment, somebody got a new living room set. But when you pass the pile where there is something there from every room in a household, that's somebody who either had to bug out and leave everything behind, or they got evicted. And it's becoming a big problem because of rising rents and housing costs. In fact, in San Francisco, it's so expensive. A family of four making $120,000 a year still qualifies for subsidized housing in the Bay Area. I mean, that is amazing. All right, we're going to take another phone call. Peter in Los Angeles, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, hi, Mike. Just wanted to chime in on that container ship thing and say that back in the 80s, there were a lot of projects that were done that I had a chance to see, or at least know about. One of them was something called, with container ships that we were doing, called Project Arapaho, and that was they were bolt-on systems to container ships, like a standard class of container ship that would be you'd bolt on a ski jump thing for a VTOL Harrier or something like that. And you'd also put containers in that had fueling systems and things like that. And just, and you could convert a container ship into a Harrier carrier in almost, like a week or something.
Uh-huh.
But there's long been stuff like that. They had another one where they were going to make an aircraft carrier out of seaplanes, and I think that they're probably reconfiguring that right now to do that with drone swarms. But it's a long-term kind of thing. That people have been doing that forever. Where you get a mass-produced thing like a Liberty ship or something like that, and then convert it into something else with yeah. But at any rate, listen, I wanted to go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, I remember seeing a demonstration, and it was just a prototype. I don't know if it's gone into production, but it was this very large military drone, like one of the 4 rotor drones, like your toy versions grown large, and it folded up and went inside a standard 20-foot shipping container. And the way it would work is the long side of the container would actually flip down. This thing would slide out, extend its arms, and it was ready to take off. Yeah,
drones really make that concept. I mean, why why go with a dedicated 90,000 ton Nimitz class carrier when you can do that with drone swarms and with a 20,000 ton small container ship and just release swarms of those things, throw away, and I mean, it could come from anywhere. It's really making navies almost obsolete, really.
Yes.
But the other thing I wanted to say also is that the state of the ground forces, and one of the very few things that Trump has done that I've agreed with is just the other day he tried to put limits on transgenders in the military, which
yes,
I'm sorry, all you LGBT, but I agree with that. And Congress overrode him on that, so they want as many LGBT drag queens as they can get out there in combat, I'm sure. But
I think that's going to be very demoralizing for the troops.
Mike, one of the things that I've learned over the years, and it's the sociology of a combat unit is very interesting. And one of the things, and you can go back through history, and they always say, it's not for apple pie and the flag, it's for the guy next to you. And in a lot of cases, that's true. In most cases, that's true. But in other things, when it really gets down to it, you read it through history where the only thing that people are hanging on to is you're proving that you're as much a man as the next guy. The manhood, the macho factor, it really does play a role. The other thing is, what do you do when an NCO or an officer is buggering one of the people there? Maybe it's a woman, maybe it's an LGBT person, and that guy never walks point or whatever. That happens all the time.
Yep.
Sure. So, but the Marine Corps now has women in the infantry officers and Rangers. Finally, they cheapened the standards down that women have gotten through, and SEAL teams.
Well, hold it. Okay, I want to be clear here. They've cheapened the standards down for recruits for the Army in terms of the physical standards. For the non-physically demanding military, like the Air Force and the Navy, they didn't need to cheapen standards for women to come on board. And
absolutely,
there are now a lot of women serving as officers in the Air Force. There are even some combat pilots now, and naval officers.
No reason they couldn't be as good as anybody at that.
Yes,
but it's different when you're carrying a 90-pound pack and you have to jump over a fence and strangle somebody on the other side. It's a little bit different, and I'm saying what I'm saying is SEAL teams they're now in the SEALs. They're now in MARSOC, Marine Special Operations Command. They're now in the Rangers. They're everywhere. In those cases, I don't believe they should be. But we're going to pay a price for being stylish here one of these days when some really critical mission fails. When maybe we're really doing it and we're really at risk.
Yes.
But I don't know, Mike. It's just. And then there's the SEAL teams with all that guy Gallagher with all the really murderous stuff that guy was doing, and it turns out SEAL Team 6 is doing some very suspect stuff.
Yeah, the investigation has expanded to them.
Yeah, our military is. It's in bad shape. It really is.
Yeah, it is. It really is. And part of that is, again, without a draft, they're having to basically recruit people who are not really ideal, people with criminal records, people with drug problems, people who are overweight. The emphasis is being put on the high-tech whiz-bang. And again, that was a mistake that the Third Reich made toward the end of World War II. They allowed their regular ground troops to decline in terms of their training and support, and they put all their money into the V-1 buzz bomb, the V-2 ballistic missile. They even had their own version of a stealth jet fighter, which wasn't all that stealthy, but at least it proves that they were thinking about it all the way back then.
Yeah, and Mike, were also the Army. I know is trying to increase its troop strength to buy like a brigade, like 5,000 people,
Yes.
and is finding it extremely difficult to do so.
Yes.
I mean, nobody wants to go on 5 deployments in a row and be the bad guy. So,
No, that's absolutely right. I mean, for a while they were trying this little thing of going to the illegal immigrants and saying if you'll sign up and serve, at the end of it you'll get a green card. But as I predicted was going to happen, they weren't well motivated, and the Army basically dropped that program.
Did you ever read any of those books by? He wrote Rick Atkinson, Army at Dawn, a World War II trilogy of the European and North African campaigns. It's really the best military history of World War II from the U.S. point of view and the American Army. But he makes a point that and back in World War II, when there were 16 million men in uniform,
Yes.
right? And our population was 130 million, and now, of course, the active army is like 495,000, and we can't man it voluntarily. But he at the beginning of World War II, Mike, they were very, very selective in 1942 when the draft was really kicking in and all that.
Yes.
And you had to have a full head full of teeth, and they wouldn't take anybody with. By 1944, Mike, the casualties were so heavy, and the manning the manpower was so thin that we were taking people with two teeth.
Yes.
And the Army regulations was they had to be able to chew the Army rations. So here we are with a population of 330 million that cannot expand voluntarily.
Nope.
From 495
Somewhere
to
down the road, there's going to be a draft.
Yep. So it's interesting, and I know you're looking out the window at this stuff, and
yeah,
I hope to God that we have enough brains and that Trump really doesn't think that he's down here from God, to protect Israel and go to war with Syria or something like that. That was scary to me.
Yeah, that was a very scary comment.
Your observation that he's very susceptible to flattery. Can you imagine what that did to him when Pompeo said that he was sent from God?
Yes. That's Pompeo was laying it on with a trowel there. All right, well, listen, Peter, we're going to let you go because we're coming up on the top of the hour and the lovely Lady Claire, and I want to take one more phone call. Keith Rogers, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, my normal gripe here is pluralisms, but first I want to say, Trump is out there on Twitter right now bashing Mexico again, and yes, Mexico, or through immigration, it costs Americans hundreds of billions of dollars and stuff like that through the time like that because of the welfare nets and all this stuff. But what gets me to, Mike, and you know me, I've always had this thing on this pluralisms. We had a shooting here in town here. You hear I said that we had a shooting.
Yes.
Where a guy was shot dead. And it doesn't mean that the entire town went over and shot this guy. And this is what I hear, and this isn't just to pick on Justin or anyone else like that, but when you hear someone else say that we are bombing someone, I'm not behind the helm of any of these buttons and stuff. I sent you a meme that I did earlier this morning on Twitter there. But it's morals versus collectivism. And I use the image of a drone, where within morals, we have over 100 million legalized gun owners in this country here. And when one gun owner goes rogue, it doesn't mean that everyone, there's pluralism, we are the ones that are responsible for this. And the same thing is when you have someone that is willingly, through collectivism, to sit there behind a drone stick in some place in Arizona or Nevada that is willing to drone someone to death, regardless of what it is. I mean, why are we, plural, accepting the crimes of the state? Because of the same fact that this government no longer represents us. So this is what we have to do is fight back against this system that doesn't represent us.
Keith, I got to let you go. We got to take a break for a commercial.
Yeah, my best, you, Claire.
All right, we'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. And speaking of immigration problems at the border, Trump is threatening to shut down the U.S.-Mexico border next week, even for all trade. And he's basically saying that if Mexico doesn't act immediately to stop these migrant hordes, that they're just going to cut off all trade with Mexico. And yeah, he can do it. And Trump came on out and said the Democrats have given us the weakest immigration laws anywhere in the world. Mexico has the strongest, and they make more than $100 billion a year on the United States. And there is another migrant horde on its way, estimated at 20,000 people. So it is a major, major problem out there. Okay, let me skip on down here. Snow is falling in Kiev, and not too surprising, it's unusual for snow to fall in late March. Apparently, there's been another snowstorm bringing snow back to the Sierra, and of course, all the operators of the ski resorts there are just absolutely delighted. Absolutely delighted. They're talking about the ski resorts will be open right up to the July 4th weekend. And, you know, it was a cold, cold winter. I mean, it was so cold, Elizabeth Warren is now claiming to be an Eskimo. Now, as we reported earlier, there is this large glacier in Greenland that has sort of been the poster child for the human-caused global warming people. And it started growing again. And apparently it's been growing for the past 2 years. And nobody wanted to say anything. They were saying, we didn't believe it, which of course you should never allow beliefs to get in the way of the raw data. But the world is getting colder, not warmer. Interesting little article from the BBC. Are you suffering from climate change anxiety? And psychologists report a rise in people suffering from climate change anxiety. Well, yeah, look at what the media's been doing. You know, just all this screaming nonsense about how the world was going to end in 12 years. That's going to make anybody just absolutely freak out. Apparently, a college is even offering a course for people who are anxious about climate change. Now, getting on back to the fact that over the last 2 years, the corporate media lied to us all about Trump-Russia collusion. Lie after lie after lie after lie after lie. Well, you know that NewsGuard browser filter that was being hailed as the way to fight fake news? It validated every source pushing the Russian collusion hoax while banning all independent media sources that got the story right. Okay, we're going to have to take a break here for station identification. We'll be back with the lovely Lady Claire after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, hour number 3. And for those of you watching on YouTube, if you're able to, given this parent spectrum slowdown, this is the lovely Lady Claire, who always joins us on Friday, hour number 3, with her unique perspective on the world. But before we go to the lovely Lady Claire, we have a caller waiting on the line. Frank in North Carolina, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, I'll be real brief. I just was catching on the local news here, ABC News affiliate, that you probably already covered this, but just in case. Another troop deployment. 3,000 troops from Fort Bragg, North Carolina, combat type unit. 3,000 troops to be deployed to Afghanistan, in several months. I guess to probably spend another year or whatnot over there. I mean, when does this end? When does this end?
Yeah, it's not going to end. I mean, the United States does not want to admit that they lost either in Afghanistan or Syria, and they're just going to stand there petulantly and say, we're still here, therefore we have not lost. And it's a very cynical thing for them to be doing. And of course, the motive for staying in Afghanistan is that oil pipeline right of way, which was the reason the war began in the first place, as well as making sure that all that opium continues to flow to America's pharmaceutical corporations at rock bottom prices, not to mention the street dealers.
Well, I hope I hope there's a contingent out there that lets Trump know that we remember he said that he was going to bring the troops home. But, it's the new boss, same as the old boss.
Yeah, I mean,
All
Obama said exactly the same thing back in 2008.
Right.
And clearly they were lying. Presidents may come and presidents may go, but the wars go on forever. Okay? All right, thank you for the phone call, Frank. We're going to let you go here. And Lady Claire, what is your first story?
Well, I saw this in Blacklisted News, and I did a double take. Apparently, Duke University is going to have to pay $112.5 million for faking scientific research data.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
More scientific fraud.
Yeah.
Imagine my shock.
Yeah, there was a press release on Monday, and the fine comes as a result of the university falsifying research on federal grants. Why? Did they think there was a specific way that the Department of Justice, wanted them to go? How did this happen?
That could very well, not the Department of Justice, but whoever
National
issued.
Institutes of Health and the
Yeah.
EPA. Yeah. And there were, the settlement goes around allegations that between 2006 and 2018, Duke knowingly submitted and caused to be submitted claims to the NIH and EPA that contain, they just made it up in 30 grants, and causing these organizations having to pay money that they wouldn't have or shouldn't have.
Yeah, basically they were relying on their grant applications.
Yeah, I don't know how long this has been going on, but this is the first that I've been aware, Mike, of a major and highly respected university pulling something like this nonsense.
Well, it has been a problem all along, and there have been studies that say that a huge number of these so-called peer-reviewed scientific articles appearing in journal are actually being crafted to support somebody's product or to attack a competitor's product, and there are literally companies that do nothing but write up these so-called scientific reports, and then they'll find some scientist and give them money to put their names on it and submit it to a journal where hopefully it's going to get published, and then the pharmaceutical company will have these, there's this article published in the journal of,
whatever,
good kidney keeping, that, our medicine does wonderful things. It has become a very corrupt process, and that's why I was being kind of sardonic about it, because it is a big problem. And like pedophilia in the church, up until now, it's been sort of kept under wraps to sort of preserve the pristine image of the scientist, but it's all coming on out now.
Yeah. It's very saddening to me because I do know what a stellar reputation that school had, and for it to be sinking this low, that's odd. Speaking of odd, this comes to us from the Department of You Really Can't Make This Stuff Up. There's a Spanish judge seeking a ringleader of the North Korea embassy attack, believed to be in the United States. Apparently the attack happened 22 February of this year, and it's turning into an international incident involving the CIA, FBI, and a Spanish judge who has issued international arrest warrants for the ringleaders who are believed to be in the United States.
And at this point, we're going to do a shout out now for our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network.
And in the attack, a group of 10 guys broke into the embassy, assaulted and handcuffed personnel, smashed photos of North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, and stole computers. And they fled to Portugal, where they split up. And this guy is very insistent. His name is Judge José de la Mata of Spain's High Court. The Audiencia Nacional is charging them with a number of crimes, including unlawful detention, violent robbery, and criminal association. The Wa Compost is reporting that the group has offered to share information with the FBI, which is kind of an odd action for a fugitive.
Yeah, I'd say that's really very, very odd.
Yeah, and now the U.S. State Department Deputy Spokesman Robert Palladino said on Tuesday that the government of the United States had nothing to do with the break-in, but with the alleged ringleader in America, the U.S. is involved, whether it likes it or not. Mike, your thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, with the U.S. trying to find some way to gain an edge over Kim Jong-un, a break-in at a North Korean embassy to try and get information. And as this article says, one of these ringleaders of this attack has apparently approached the FBI and said, "We have information for you."
Wow, that's almost stranger than science fiction. And speaking of science fiction, we go to our next article. Tom Cruise is apparently considered a deity among Scientology members. And this was said by a defector, and we all know Lena Remedy. Apparently, Bree Mood, that's an interesting name, who left the church, said that Tom Cruise is literally considered a god or deity among the practitioners of the religion. And Mood also let slip that Scientology churches bus their members to theater times every time one of the actors' films is released, and regularly takes them back for second and third screenings.
Well, his movies are good, but they're not that good.
I know, and yeah, they'd buy up the Church of Scientology will buy up all the tickets. It could be for 50, 100, or 1,000, and he said he's not kidding. And after her escape from the church, Mood described the abuse she endured in an interview with the Daily Mail. Now, this lady was treated horrifically. She was pregnant, forced to terminate the pregnancy, and punished with hard labor for breaking the rules of the church.
Is Lee Remedy's show still on the air?
I am
haven't
not
seen
sure.
it for a while.
I haven't seen it either, so I don't know.
That's worth going through the guide.
And Scientology is very popular in Hollywood, but there have also been a number of scandals involving some really rotten human rights violations. And for a long time, the things that went on were mostly unknown. But in recent years, the unethical practices of the church have been exposed by whistleblowers. And in many cases, some of the high-profile defectors were actually biological or married family members of the church's current leader, David Miscavige. Both David's dad and a niece have come forward to speak out against the organization and have written books about what goes on behind the scenes. It's got to be pretty awful. And
you got to get out your Google Earth, and go take a peek at where David Miscavige lives. The world headquarters of Scientology. It's out in the deserts of Southern California. It is palatial.
Oh, opulent in the extreme.
Yes, with a capital Op.
Yes, and the most high-profile defector was the actress we were just talking about, Leah Remini, who was in the church since she was a kid, but publicly left the organization and went on to expose their crimes with a book and TV series. I hope she's okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Here we're going to the EFF, the Electronic Freedom Foundation.
Electronic Frontier
Foundation.
Sorry about that.
The court is denying them any ability to obtain classified significant surveillance court's opinion. And earlier this week, there was another court opinion that blunted a key provision of the surveillance reform law that had required the government to be more transparent about legal decisions made by the U.S. Secret Service Court.
Okay, we're talking here about the FISA court.
Yeah.
And I can understand why they're being very, very nervous because there's a lot of attention focused on just what was going on. And with the collapse of Russia Gate,
right?
Trump is already saying he's getting ready to declassify those FISA documents. And it could basically prove what we've been saying all along. The FISA court was just a rubber stamp to make blatantly illegal, unconstitutional actions by our intelligence agencies have the veneer of legality.
When they aren't really.
No, they really aren't.
Yeah.
Laws repugnant to the Constitution are automatically null and void. That's Marbury versus Madison, United States Supreme Court. And by the way, there were subsequent Supreme Court decisions that reiterated that any law that violated the Constitution was dead on arrival.
Okay. And apparently, Electronic Frontier Foundation was very happy that the final language in this ruling...
They were not happy.
Pleased that... Oh, okay.
Sorry about that.
No. They were pleased... Yeah, okay.
They were... The wrong place. Sorry about that. My bad.
Okay. They are pleased that the final language did require that the government review and oversight committee classify each decision, order, or opinion that contains significant interpretations of the Constitution or other public laws, and to make them publicly available to the greatest extent practicable.
Okay, and that was declassified, not classified.
Yeah,
all right.
Okay. And, this has been an issue. I mean, we're all surveilled all the time. People are looking in, listening in. My texts to Michael are pretty vanilla. Can you get me some rice crisps in the cheddar cheese aisle?
Cheddar cheese. I'm sure somewhere out there's an FBI agent saying cheddar cheese, that's code for anthrax.
Yeah,
okay.
right.
By the way, I just got a text from Mike in our control room. Lee Remini's show is still on the A&E channel. The current season apparently ended February 5th, but I'm sure probably...
They're going to redo it.
Well, you can go back and replay it.
Right.
It is a good show, and it's horrific to see what's going. But in the name of religion, whether it's Scientology or Jim Jones or what's his name, Applegate.
Yes.
Let's all drink the poison, and we're going to go ride on the comet.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Now you've covered this, right?
Basically, I covered it.
Okay.
Where Kim Fox, when she said she recused herself from the Smollett case, she was crossing her fingers behind her back.
Yeah. Absolutely. Here was something that was very disturbing. Apparently, there is a video out of cops filming themselves viciously beating a suicidal hospital patient for their own amusement. And when FBI agents launched an investigation into crooked drug dealing, Patterson police officer Reuben McCausland, they made a really scary discovery when they seized his cell phone for evidence. Apparently, this guy and his partner, Officer Roger Then, filmed themselves attacking a man in the hospital for sheer enjoyment. And
to protect and to serve.
Yeah, I mean, prior to the video being discovered, the U.S. Assistant Attorney Rahul Agrawal said in federal court in Newark on Wednesday morning
that they didn't know about the assault.
Yeah, and the patient was later identified and has since filed a $4 million suit against the city.
Okay, can we move you a little bit closer so you can see the screen?
I will. Okay, thank you. Better.
Okay.
And apparently this footage was taken on 5 March of last year at a hospital in Patterson. The guy in the hospital bed had just attempted suicide and was being treated. He needed help, but sadly what he got was a broken face. I do not understand this behavior. They hit him so hard that blood was spraying from his face twice, and the blows were so vicious that he was severely injured and required stitches. What is wrong with these people, Mike?
I have no idea.
A suicidal guy in a hospital bed, they were trying to treat him and train him, and the cops say, let's just beat this guy up.
Well, there's a lot of people who join the police force because they really want to do good work and serve our community. Our neighbor's one of those, obviously.
Yes, and she's wonderful.
But there are people who are attracted to the authority of that uniform and that badge. And I remember my half-brother.
Yes, you told me.
He was scary. He was just so scary. And but he's no longer with the LA sheriffs.
which is probably a good thing.
I think it's a very good thing.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, where did you... Oh.
Okay. We're having a little bit of mouse conflict here.
Okay.
Now, one of the things that happened this last week that I thought was interesting, the UN Security Council unanimously passes binding terror financing resolution. Now, Mike, what is that going to do to the U.S., which unfortunately still does these war crimes all over the place?
Well, the United Nations can pass this resolution about terror financing, but terror financing is already done in the black.
Yeah.
It's not going to change one thing. It's just the United Nations getting up there and saying, we're trying to do something about the problem.
Yeah, looking good. Okay. We have another one that's kind of interesting. Apparently, President Trump and his top U.S. military advisors met with Google CEO about concerns that Silicon Valley's AI collaborations in China may benefit the Chinese military. Well, yeah, you know, except right now it looks to me like China is way ahead of us on a lot of stuff.
I would say so.
Yeah.
If anything, I think it would be an opportunity for the United States to gain access to some of their technology.
Yeah. And apparently the meeting came after General Joseph Dunford, chairman of the Joint Chiefs, leveled pointed criticism at Google for pursuing technological collaborations with Chinese partners. And this was something that came up in his testimony before the Senate Armed Service Committee on 14 March. The glare was a little harsher, though, when President Trump followed up on Twitter. Google is helping China and their military, but not the U.S. Terrible.
Well, see, that's a little disingenuous here.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure Google would welcome technological partnerships with the United States.
Yeah.
And this is another case of China is making deals, the U.S. is trying to make war, and they can't catch up, and so we're just going to do the tough act here.
Yeah. You followed this.
Yeah, we already followed. We got a lot of calls on that one as well.
Yes, definitely.
And that was about the container ship cruise missile.
And apparently Brussels is getting all over itself, and it steps up what it calls war games to get ready for a no-deal Brexit. Now, the EU demands Britain pay £39 billion of a divorce bill if it wants to thrash out a trade deal. Mike, this is the activity of a bully.
Yes.
And an organization that is completely
It
tone
is.
deaf.
And we have to take a break for commercials, and we will be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. And apparently over in Gaza, the protests to mark the one-year anniversary of the Great March of Return are actually scheduled for Saturday, not today, which is why we weren't hearing anything about it. But we just saw a crawl on the Fox News channel where everybody is bracing for potential violence. So I'm hoping it's not going to get ugly. But yeah, anyway.
And one thing I would like to comment on this, if there's anyone who has family back home in Gaza, okay, and listens to maybe a download of this, about a podcast of this show, please don't bring the children out there. The Israeli snipers are going to go for the kids first. Why? Because when you kill a child, you kill a portion of a country's future.
Absolutely.
Which is why they, I don't want to see anyone be hit for target practice, and particularly not kids.
The Israeli snipers also go after the journalists because they want to limit media coverage.
Yep.
And they go after the medics.
Yes. And there was a T-shirt that was in circulation, and it showed a member of the IDF holding his gun on a pregnant woman, 1 shot, 2 kills.
Yeah, that was kind of tacky.
I don't know what people are thinking or how. But let's move back here. Russia has ordered a major VPN provider to block banned sites. And this is coming for us from torrentfreak.com. And apparently 10 VPN providers have been ordered by Russian authorities to begin blocking sites present in the country's national blacklist. And these included NordVPN, ExpressVPN, IPVanish, and can we say this?
No, we can't say that one on
Hide
here.
my. You can guess what the was.
Hide my gluteus.
Yes, my gluteus. Yeah. And TorGuard also received a notification as has pulled its services completely out of Russia immediately. What the Russians have tried to do is to restrict access to content the state finds objectionable. And it's many kinds of sites, pirate platforms, site hosting, extremist content have all been affected. And local ISPs are required by Russian law to block their domains, rendering them inaccessible. But unfortunately, as with the Great Firewall of China,
yes,
there are plenty of ways to get around this, and that's something that the government of Russia is trying to address.
Yep.
And in July of 2017, President Putin signed a bill into law aiming to close the loophole. The plan was to prevent citizens from accessing banned sites using VPNs, proxies, Tor, or other anonymizing services. And the threat was really quite elementary. If such services were found to be facilitating access to banned platforms, they too could find themselves on Russia's internet blacklist, known locally as FGIS. Now, some VPN have already pulled out before the legislation is due to take place, but I wonder what kind of an effect that's going to have in the long term.
Well, it's not like we're not seeing censorship here in this country as well, although I saw one article earlier today that suggested that since the collapse of Russiagate on Monday, that Facebook, Google, and YouTube appear to have maybe backed off a little bit on their hard filtering of conservatives.
Yeah.
And again, the trouble we're having with our YouTube feed today is not YouTube, but Spectrum, which is apparently having major bandwidth issues between here and the mainland or across the mainland.
Yeah, yeah. There was another tech article which I really appreciated. There is apparently mysterious, undocumented technology hidden on Intel computer chips. Now, chip experts have claimed that the chips which power most of the computers in the world are hiding some sort of mysterious and undocumented technology. And apparently analysts from Positive Technologies alleged that Intel chips and processors contain an enigmatic logic signal analyzer capable of reading almost all data on the computer. Mike, I want your thoughts on this.
Well, I mean, theoretically, the CPU of a computer can read all the data on a computer anyway, so I'm not exactly sure what this is. Somebody needs to actually figure out what it's doing.
What the effect is, right?
Yeah, what it's being used for. But we do know that certainly NSA has been pushing for hardware backdoors in all hardware. This could be it.
Yeah.
And again, if you want to keep something personal, you got to keep it to yourself here. And I know in these hard economic times it's kind of hard to do, but you might want to consider like resurrecting an old laptop that that doesn't go on the internet. It's air gapped is basically what it is.
Yeah.
All right, we got to take another break for commercials. We have a caller waiting on the line, and we'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. And before we go back to the Lady Claire, we have a caller waiting on the line. Tom in Utah. Aloha, Tom. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike and Claire. Now that we've found out that the Russiagate was simply a projected machination.
Yes.
And the war against Russia is a fiction. What about the other war that we need to be now refocusing on? And I'm asking Claire as a woman, and I have a sense we need to turn backward to the enemy domestic rather than the enemy foreign.
Well, if you're talking about the existing wars, like Yemen, Somalia, and in Afghanistan, they all need to stop. Because from what I have read, in all of these situations, the only lasting solution has to be a negotiated settlement. So what do you think?
Every one of them, it appears that the war is against the family. And I don't care whether it's U.S. family.
Yeah. There's definitely a war on the family. There's definitely open hostility toward white Americans, white heterosexual males especially. We're at it's everybody just seems to be turned against everybody right now, and it's hard to imagine any place on Earth where there's some kind of peace and calm, outside of, our little place here.
Mm-hmm. And I think that the issue about families, and I think good families create a good opportunity for any country to grow and do well. But there are several components that need to happen. First is love. Second is structure. Third, extended family, however that shakes out.
The Ohana.
Yeah, and fourth, giving kids a reason to dream, and that those dreams just may come true.
Well,
I think those are all important.
That's an important one. Well, add to that, we have to have an economy where only one of the parents has to work, and the other parent can be there to take care of the kids.
Yeah.
In today's economy, the vast majority of households, both parents are having to work, which means the kids are being raised by their government indoctrination centers and by what they see on television. And that may be something that the deep state thinks is more useful to them, not letting the kids get bad ideas about things like patriotism from the parents. But right now, what's really hardest for young people coming up is they don't see that they've got a chance at a brighter future. And so why would they be motivated to study hard as opposed to simply cheating their way through? And that's another bad aspect of this cheating scandal. Students who are not from rich families, they're just going to say, why should I bother studying hard to get into college, when some rich family's just going to bribe their kid in ahead of me?
Yeah, that's
by the
really
way, being
sad.
a college
Go ahead, Tom.
being a college graduate, I came to realize that most of what I was taught, what I was spoon-fed in college, was nonsense.
Yes.
Yeah.
I went through the same experience. I didn't actually finish college. I quit in my senior year over a minor disagreement with the school's theater department.
That left you with at least a little bit of untainted cerebral tissue. Thank goodness you quit.
Thank you, Tom.
Anyway, my concern has been all along, all through this garbage that has been out there. You and I, we've all known that this was a fiction. But in the background, I see the damage being done to our children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren. I'm 80. Well, my primary concern now is what are my grandkids going to have as a future for them if we do not clean up the crap that's occurring right now. And I'm so grateful to the fact that this whole Russiagate has been exposed for the fraud that it is.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
We agree totally.
I'm hoping we can spend energy on fixing the real problems, which are right at our doorstep.
Yep. I agree.
Well, that mechanism that created and promoted that Russiagate hoax, that is the enemy at the doorstep. And we've got to go after them because they're going to come after us. That corporate media, they have been humiliated. They've been disgraced. They're looking on the independent media. They only hated us before. Now they see us as a mortal enemy. And so it's going to get really ugly in the very near future.
Well, I'm hoping we can prevail because our kids are depending on us. They don't know it, but they are dependent upon our success.
Yes, absolutely, and in every way.
All right. Well, Tom, thank you very much for the phone call. We're going to let you go. And Lady Claire, what's your next story?
Well, this was a little odd and rather unusual, but the State Department has issued a rare call for a probe after Saudis bombed a Yemen hospital. And the U.S., with a straight face, is making the statement it wants all sides to take steps to protect civilians. How in the name of heaven can they say
that's
this?
Four Pinocchios right there.
Oh, man.
I mean, basically, the State Department could issue the call, but what they're saying is they're going to let Saudi Arabia investigate what happened.
Yeah, which means there'll be no results.
Yeah.
I mean, these people have been shelling schools, they've been shelling hospitals, universities, markets, etc., with impunity. And that President Trump thought it was a good idea to double down on assisting the Saudis in Yemen. Mike, it terrifies me.
But again, you need to understand what's really going on in Yemen. This is not a Saudi war.
Oh, no.
Saudis are the proxies for the United States.
Right.
Several years ago, there was a regime change in Yemen. The United States kicked out the legitimately elected government of Yemen, and they imposed what is now being called the internationally recognized government. The people of Yemen absolutely did not like that, and basically tried to kick them back out. So the United States, knowing that the American people are really kind of getting fed up with war, went to Saudi Arabia and said, you need to go on in and just slap these people of Yemen down to where they'll go back to being a province of the American empire.
Yeah.
You know, it shouldn't take more than 2 or 3 weeks. We'll give you some money and weapons with which to do it. And of course, it's dragged on to this horrible situation. But that's really what's going on in Yemen. Yemen doesn't want to be under U.S. puppet rule, and the U.S. via Saudi Arabia is out there saying, yes, you will. Nobody ever leaves the American empire. Okay, we have another caller on the line. So let us go to Fred in Iowa. Aloha, Fred. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, hi, Claire, Lady Claire.
Yes.
I'm really happy to hear you when you talk.
Thank you.
Helps a lot. I'm going to sound a little bit like on the morbid side, but as you were speaking of Israel, you know, the genocide, and that's what it is, the genocide to the Palestinians is horrid.
I hear you.
What's happening? Okay, but get to the bottom of it, and then this is this. All right, our government, United States, invades all these countries, kills, slaughters, tortures, and maims women and children.
I know.
And then imposes a dictator and then takes their natural resources, mainly oil.
Right.
That's why the BS about Venezuela right now.
Yes. Yeah.
And then people harp about illegal aliens is the word, but it's been changed to immigrants invading the country and Europe, all right? Why and who caused that? Well, they want a better life, but if they're being killed and maimed and murdered in their own country, and don't even realize who is doing it, they're going to come to where a safer place is, in most cases. I'm not saying that everybody comes here. Okay, if we weren't over there slaughtering their women and children and installing a dictator and taking their natural resources and impoverishing those people, this wouldn't happen.
Yeah.
So
well,
when people
unfortunately, Fred, you've got a rather simplistic view of what's going on with the migration issue, because studies have already shown that just a very small percentage of these people are actually fleeing a war zone. Most of them are being lured to the United States and Europe with the promise of free stuff. And the idea that they're going to get handouts, they're going to go on food stamps, and all of this is really being pushed by the globalists who want to basically destroy separate national cultural identities and just sort of blur us all together so that they can drop the borders and it's just one planet of brown working people and, you know, one private central bank.
You you made some very, very valid points. Now, when I make this statement, I'll be accused of disliking Mexicans. No. But Mexicans are coming over here, and not only Mexicans.
Oh, no, it's not only Mexicans.
Right. But they're coming over here for the freebies.
Yep.
All right. I agree with you there. And most people, and you said it, but people don't get it. The deep state controls the world. And we haven't elected a president in 100 years. And it doesn't matter whether they're Democrats or Republicans. But let's see if I don't lose my train of thought here. It sounds like that I'm really coming on with, people just don't realize, and they won't face it, that how evil man can be. Mm-hmm. Now, with all that being said, I'm going to say something here. Without the Bible, education is worthless. Noah Webster. Okay, you don't have to be a Christian that goes to church on the Sabbath, the 7th, Saturday, and through the week. But it's how you conduct yourself and treat your fellow man. And when you have a foundation in the Bible, then you can stand up and to fear and misery. And then you can have compassion for people. You lose your fear. So as an individual, try to live a life that is righteous and helping your fellow man. And then one other thing. Now, RBN is fabulously great. You have great callers. You're speaking to the choir callers. Get off your rear end and speak to people. And the last caller that talked about what is happening to our children and our grandchildren, for criminy sake, talk to your kids.
Yes.
Talk to your neighbors. Get out and talk to people. Just calling in there and speaking to the choir is useless if you don't do something. Okay, I've raved on and on enough. And kudos to you, Lady Claire. I like hearing from you. Bye and thank you. Have a good day.
Right. Well, bye-bye. Thank you very much. We're going to let you go here. I do take issue with your statement that we haven't elected a president in 100 years. We did in November 2016. That's what kicked off this whole ruckus. Okay, because the deep state just got used to the idea they were going to pick the presidents and they were going to convince the American people that we voted for the person they wanted to be in the White House. And, it was supposed to be Hillary Clinton's turn. And when we, the American people, overrode the massive election fraud and put in Trump, did you see the reaction? And it was all of a sudden like, oh my goodness, we're losing control.
Yep.
And we have to reassert our control. We have to go back out there and say, look, you're going to have the president we chose for you. And they may try that again in 2020. Anyway, Claire, what's your next story?
It goes back to Yemen, and apparently the Yemeni National Committee has issued a report on human rights cases in the last 6 months of 2018, and there were 408 civilians killed and 711 wounded in the period from August to the end of January. And Mike, this madness has to stop. Absolutely. And when I see pictures of the destruction and the carnage, I'll put them up and I'll say, warning, graphic content. The American people should be having a national conversation as to whether this war is in any way to the siding of the U.S. Is the war doing us any good? And we need to get that going as a national question.
It's not doing the nation and the people any good. It's doing the corporations great.
Oh, I know.
Whether it's the defense contractors or the oil companies or the banks that are financing all of this stuff.
Yep.
Remember, war is the banker's richest harvest of debt. And that's a big part of what's going on right now. But all of these wars, it has destroyed America's reputation as a moral leader around the world. We are now looked down on by other nations. We are hated and reviled by the rest of the world. And we're seeing more and more countries just try and pull away from us and say, we don't want to be part of what you're doing anymore.
And what really drives me crazy about Yemen is the reality that we have U.S. military aiding and abetting the Saudis in their war crimes in Yemen. That to me is horrible.
But again, the Saudis are acting as a proxy for the U.S. to reassert U.S. control. I mean, at one point, the U.S.-approved government of Yemen was literally holding their meetings in a car carrier ship at the harbor. And it was at that point Saudi Arabia got sent on in to say, you slap those Yemeni people back into line. And you tell them, you will love your puppet ruler. You will love your internationally approved, meaning U.S.-approved government. And now they're getting ready to try and do the same thing in Venezuela. Okay. We're going to take one more phone. Actually, no, we got a commercial break here. Then we got one more caller on the line, and then it's the end of the show for this Pauhana Friday. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. Last segment of our program on this Pauhana Friday. We're going to take one more phone call from Steve in North Carolina. Aloha, Steve. Welcome to the show. What's on your... Oh, Steve hung up. Oh, well, to heck with him. All right, so we're going to close the phone lines for the rest of the show. And Claire?
This comes again from the Department of You Cannot Make This Stuff Up. Apparently, our SecDef is lobbying Iraqi leaders to let the U.S. troops stay. We've done so much for Iraq, smashing it to bits, destroying its infrastructure, and debathifying it. Apparently, the Iraqi Parliament Speaker, Mohammed al-Babouzi, was at the Pentagon Wednesday to listen to Acting Defense Secretary Patrick Shanahan, who was trying to sell him, and by extension the rest of Parliament, on keeping the U.S. troops in Iraq.
Told you they were never going to leave.
That is going to be a little bit of a tough sell.
Yes.
Because the Iraqis declared the ISIS war over in 2017, and politicians were asking questions about the pullout process, that the Pentagon stance in troops are staying, and that they never asked Iraq about it isn't sitting very well.
I can imagine it isn't. Well, you need to understand the United States built what they call an embassy in Baghdad, in the Green Zone. It is enormous. It is gigantic.
Like a couple of football fields, right?
It's the largest embassy, nudge, nudge, wink, wink, say no more, in the world. And most people think basically it is the command post that the United States intends to use to project power over the Middle East. And obviously they're not going to walk away from a facility like that.
And apparently this opposition is something that America's military and politicians have to own, because they made enemies of virtually every big Shiite bloc by insinuating that they're all secretly in league with Iran, and Trump saying that the U.S. might as well stay in Iraq just to keep an eye on Iran. Now, the one name that doesn't get mentioned in this article is that of Imam Moqtada Al-Sadr. Remember this guy. He now has tremendous power because his constituency won the majority in the last parliamentary election. He threatened originally that if the U.S. did not leave Iraq at the time and moment specified in the SOFA agreement for the U.S. to leave Iraq, that all American military would be fair game for his Mahdi army.
So we're going to have ourselves another Iraq war.
2.0. What happens in D.C. if this guy says, heck no, America's got to go? And I don't know what the politicians are thinking, but in light of that, I would like to think that maybe there is some sort of intelligently crafted answer to this that does not result in an Iraq 2.0 re-invasion of the country. And how are they going to sell that to the American
Well, actually, this would be 3.0 because there was Desert Storm. All right. Okay, there's the music. It's time for us to get on out of here. Stay tuned for John Stadmiller's show, although actually the microphone's being taken by Ralph Winterroad, and I'm sure he's got lots to share with you. Please take what you learn here, share it with everybody that you know, use email, paper mail, face-to-face. As that caller said, go out and start talking to people.
Yeah.
We need to evangelize and reach out to people who probably now they're waking up after the collapse of Russiagate. So now's our opportunity to go on out and educate them. Have yourselves a really good weekend. We'll be back Monday. Aloha, America.